Welcome to another edition of the TimeFlies podcast. I am your host, Ariel. The USA just finished beating Germany by the score of 88 to 92, and this was USA's last warm-up game until the Olympics actually start. And the Olympics don't start until Sunday, where they open up group play against Serbia. And in my opinion, I actually think that the USA they would actually be in a lot better place if they actually had maybe like one more warm-up game. So all in all, this was a really good game for USA to be tested. In the last two games against South Sudan this past Saturday, they won by 1 point. And then in today's game, the game was pretty much up for grabs up until the last like 4 minutes, where LeBron James kind of like took over the game, which I'll get to later on in this episode. But to start off the game, the starting five, every game, Steve Kerr, it looks like he's changing up the starting five. And for today's game, he started Steph Curry at the one, Devin Booker at the two, Jrue Holiday at the three, LeBron James at the four, and Joel Embiid at the five. Now, the first thing that I took away from Steve Kerr's starting five was that KD wasn't playing. During the game against South Sudan on Saturday, the commentators were saying that KD was going to probably play on Monday, which is today against Germany. Today is the last warm-up game for USA, so it would have been nice to see KD go out there and actually compete just to see how he looks. And I was a little bummed out when I didn't see Kevin Durant in the starting five. I wanted to see him just play with Steph Curry, LeBron James, and Joel Embiid. I just want to see what it looks like. And it looks like we're not going to see it until Sunday when they open up against Serbia. Hopefully there's no setbacks during the week when KD is training. But even though that was a little bit of a bummer, the rest of the game was pretty good. Germany, man, the one thing that I took away from Germany is, first of all, if I'm Germany going into this game, even though it's only an exhibition, if I'm Dennis Schroeder, if I'm Franz Wagner, if I'm Mo Wagner, I'm telling every one of my teammates, like, yo, we're the fucking champs. We're the fucking champs. We are the ones that are favored to win this game. I don't give a fuck who's out there on the court. I don't care if it's LeBron, Kevin Durant. I don't care if the angel of Kobe Bryant comes back. Kobe, I love you. But I don't care if Kobe's on the floor. We're the champs. We're the ones that are favored to win this game. And if I'm the leader of Germany, I'm telling every one of my guys, like, yo, we're gonna get this W. But going back to the actual game, Germany, man, yo, I feel like Germany might have the perfect team to go up against USA, because the one thing that I've noticed that USA has a lot of trouble with in these last exhibition games is specifically their big men. If the big man is able to step out beyond the paint and stretch the floor, if it's a mid-range shot, if it's a three-pointer, Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis, and especially Joel Embiid, I feel like they have such a hard time guarding the bigs that can stretch the floor. And for Germany, they have Mo Wagner who can hit the three. They have other bigs who can stretch beyond the paint and stretch the floor and hit the three. And it seems like if you're a team scouting against the USA, if you have a big, and in today's not even NBA landscape, but in today's basketball landscape, it feels like everybody needs to be able to at least shoot the ball. You really can't just be one dimensional, and you can't just be having your way around in the paint. You have to be able to stretch the floor. And I feel like a lot of the teams that USA is going to be playing in the Olympics, like we've seen it. Serbia, you got Jokic. South Sudan, we've seen it. USA had a lot of trouble against them, even though they kind of disrespected them. But South Sudan, they have players that can play. Germany, we can see as well. France, Wemby, the big man, he's like a generational player. All the teams that I'm naming, they have a big man or two that can stretch beyond the paint and stretch the floor. So it's going to be very interesting going to the Olympics to see how USA's bigs are going to be able to guard that. Going back to the start of this game against Germany, I like how the USA came out. You can tell that they came out with a lot more intensity against Germany rather than they had against South Sudan. It looks like they didn't disrespect Germany. It looks like they actually came out to play. So I definitely like to see that. And Dennis Schroeder, man, Dennis Schroeder, it's so funny how like in the NBA, he's just a typical role player. But whenever you get into these international plays and international rules, like the Olympics, like the World Cup, Dennis Schroeder looks like the second coming of Michael Jordan. Dennis Schroeder is hitting threes. He's setting up his guys. He's hitting Magic Johnson passes. Like Dennis Schroeder is one of those players that like he's just not the same player whenever it comes to international games. Something else that I noticed during the game is up until the 3 minute mark of the first quarter, the starting five played, but then Steve Kerr put in like the substitution players. And I think this is the first time where he had these players play together. He took Derek White, he took Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum, Bam Adebayo, and Anthony Davis. It was like a platoon. It was kind of interesting because I think this is the first time that I see Steve Kerr just completely substitute the starting five and completely put in another five players. Like whenever he substitutes the starting five, it's always like one player or two players. It could be just me, so don't kill me in the comments. But this is the first time where I noticed that he took out the starting five and put in a whole nother slew of five players. And the mixture of the players is pretty interesting. Derek White at the one, Anthony Edwards at the two. I'm not really that surprised. Jason Tatum at the three, I'm not really that surprised. But inserting Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis at the same time, that was pretty interesting. And then there was one play where I might have been in the first half or in the second half. I'm not exactly sure. I'm getting my times mixed up. But there was one play where one of the defenders blew past their man, and then Bam Adebayo met that man at the rim, and you see Bam Adebayo just completely smack it against the backboard. But when you saw the replay, Anthony Davis was right there in the paint. So if you have Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo, those two bigs in the paint protecting the rim, like that's going to be really hard for anybody attacking the rim to get some points on us. So actually, today's actually the best we've seen Joel Embiid play. He ended the game with 15 points, five of 8 from the field. But there was one in particular play where I believe it was in the first half where Joel Embiid, he actually blocked the guy's last name is Bonga. I forgot his first name, but he's the guy with the blonde hair. But he blocked Bonga's dunk attempt, and that was a really nice, clean block. But what that play led up to, it led to Anthony Edwards going up the floor, crossing somebody up, and then it led to Anthony Edwards tomahawk jam. And I feel like plays like that is what Joel Embiid needs to see. He needs to see how he's going to impact the team and how he's going to impact the play of the game. And yeah, maybe Joel Embiid might not have the same effect as he does on an offensive end like he does in the NBA, but he can still help his team out on a defensive end. And in this play in particular, he got that clean block against Bonga. Anthony Edwards went up the floor and then he crossed somebody up and it led to a nice tomahawk jam. So Joel Embiid, like I said earlier, like this is the best we've seen him play. He still looks out of shape. He still looks a little like he's getting used to the rules and getting used to where his teammates want the ball, where they cut. But as far as just from all the exhibition games, this is the best one he's looked so far. And one thing I want to mention about the USA is I feel like where teams are going to be able to exploit the USA is whenever the USA, when they look like they're feeling themselves, like there are certain points in the game where they were up on South Sudan, where they were up on Germany, and it looks like they were like it's kind of like their shit don't stink. Like they were playing like with a little bit too much swag, a little bit too much confidence. And we've seen it time and time again with all these exhibition games. The first one against Canada, it was a close game. Australia, they came back from like a 25-point deficit. Like when USA, whenever they're in that zone of like they think they're too good, that's when like mentally they let their guard down and they let the other team able to come back into the game. So I feel like, and again, like I said in the previous video, there's just something about this team that I'm not 100% confident and I'm not 100% signed off on as to this team coming back home with the gold. I think that there is a team out there that's going to be able to get them in the Olympic gold game or maybe in the semifinals. I don't know where exactly, but if they face up against Germany, like if they face up against France, Canada, like there might be a team out there that can definitely get them. And USA, man, they're so good when they're just moving the ball around. But when they're stagnant, they're like the Boston Celtics. Even though the Boston Celtics won the championship this past season, the one thing you could say about the Boston Celtics was that when they were moving the ball around, ball movement, body movement, they were an extremely hard team to beat. But then when Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, whenever they got into the isolation moments, like that team was super easy to figure out. That team was super easy to draw defensive schemes against. And this is the same thing with the Team USA. It's like when LeBron is one-on-one out on the top of the key, like it's easy to guard him. Steph Curry as well, Anthony Edwards specifically. So when LeBron James, Steph Curry, Anthony Edwards, KD, whenever he's out there, whenever they're moving the ball around, getting body movement, getting backdoor cuts, Team USA is going to be unstoppable. But I feel like teams, they're going to want the USA to play isolation basketball. LeBron James at 39 years old, turning 40 years old in December, like man, I think he's still the best player on this team. Like up until the last 4 minutes of the game, LeBron James is the one that took it over. He took it over by getting timely rebounds, by getting timely buckets, and those timely buckets were in the paint when he was flexing on everybody. He hit a big three. Like LeBron James was everywhere, and it's kind of crazy that he's 39 years old and he's still the best player on this team. We've never seen anything like LeBron James. LeBron James, I feel like we have taken him so much for granted. He's been exuding greatness ever since his rookie year in the league. We've been taking him for granted for about 20 years, and when he leaves the game, man, we're sorely gonna miss him because I don't think we're ever gonna see him again. But going back to this game, like LeBron James at 39 years old taking over the game, saying like, yeah, he's the best player on the court. That's insane. You got other players on the court along the likes of Anthony Edwards, along the likes of Steph Curry, KD, whenever he gets back, Joel Embiid, even though he's kind of hurt. LeBron James is the best player I've seen in my lifetime, and hopefully they don't have any hiccups in this Olympic tournament and they're able to get the gold. I mean, today they ended the game with 14 turnovers. I would like to see the USA end the game with at least a minimum of 10 turnovers. I think in every exhibition game, it's always been 14 above. Against Canada, I think they ended with 18. And one last nugget I want to leave you guys with is this past weekend, Joel Embiid had an interview with the New York Times, and he gave quotes about talking about the GOAT. And Joel Embiid said that if he didn't have any of these freak injuries, Joel Embiid would be in the conversation for being the GOAT. But of course, things happen in the NBA. He's been super frustrated with his career with freak injuries. Every season, it looks like right before the playoffs or in the middle of the season, he ends up getting a freak injury, whether if it's a broken bone in his face, something in his hand, his knee, his back, his foot. Joel Embiid, man, he's one of the most, if not the most talented big that I've ever seen in my lifetime. The handles, the footwork, the post up, the mid range, the 3-pointer. Like Joel Embiid, if he was fully healthy and he had a LeBron-esque type of career, I'm not saying that he had to go 20 seasons without one freak injury, but if he had a LeBron James-esque career where he was consistent for about 7, 8 seasons with no injuries and he was just able to show us what he's able to do, I feel like Joel Embiid would definitely have one championship under his belt. But unfortunately, that's not how the cookie crumbles, and you got to deal with life. And I don't know, when I heard that quote from Joel Embiid, like I understood him. Like I get it that, like things didn't really go your way as far as injuries. But at the same time, like Joel Embiid, you also got to point the finger towards yourself a little bit because when you were healthy, the few amounts of examples that we can point to, when you were healthy going into an NBA season, like you were never really fully in shape. It always looked like you were playing your way into shape throughout the NBA season. And if you're somebody who's taking this extremely seriously, like the LeBrons, like the Kobe's, like the KD's, you're coming into the season in shape. And we've never had that off season where we've seen Joel Embiid just be completely ripped with a six pack, looking like he's slim, looking like he's ripped. And we just never seen that from Joel Embiid. We always praise Joel Embiid for his footwork and his skills and his talent. But the one thing that Joel Embiid, I feel like, is not really understanding is that you also got to point the finger at yourself a little bit. Maybe there's things that you could have done throughout your career that could have excelled you into the LeBron-esque caliber type of player. But I also want to salute Joel Embiid for being candid because nowadays, whenever the NBA players they do interviews, if it's like after the first quarter interview or if it's at halftime, they sound so robotic and I get it. They have NBA media training and they don't want to say anything wrong to make the NBA look bad. I get it, but honestly, I'd rather have players be themselves, like a Charles Barkley or Dennis Rodman. I want to see the type of player that you are. I want to see your personality. So for Joel Embiid to say that in the New York Times, talking about the GO and how he could have been in the conversation, but things just didn't swing his way. Like I commend Joel Embiid for doing that. But at the same time, it kind of like opens my eyes and it kind of lets me know, like, oh, everything we've said about you is kind of right. Like, you need to point the finger at yourself and hold yourself a little accountable. Guys, that's it for today's episode. I want to say thank you so much for checking it out. If you're listening to this on any of the podcast streaming platforms, remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. That'll be a really big help. USA is done with all of their exhibition games, and now the next game that the USA plays will be the real deal Holyfield. They open up against Serbia this Sunday in the first Olympic game. So make sure to tune into the TimeFlies podcast. I will be coming out with an episode talking about their opening game against Serbia. But until next time, I'll check you out on the next episode of the TimeFlies podcast. Let's go, USA. Let's bring home the gold, baby. KD, let's get you out on the court, baby. I need to see you with LeBron, Steph, Jason Tatum. Let's go, baby. Let's go.